Hi, this is Josh.
And this is Matt.
And this is the Call to the Brewman's Bottle.
The Call to the Brewman's Bottle.
So we're kicking it all off, and first things first, I wanted to talk a little bit about the YouTube channel and the progression of where the podcast is at in general. We've been talking a little bit about throwing up the website and stuff like that. I've personally done a whole lot of investigation in what it takes to get that website up, and here in the coming weeks, you're going to probably hear a lot more about it, but I'm going to be able to actually get my feet to the ground and get some stuff going about this website. And just to tell you guys a little bit about what's going to be on there, we're planning on having some calendar style thing on our website that's going to show some different events, whether it's gaming tournaments or different foam fighting or LARPing events or things of that nature, different things at different comic book stores. We want to be able to let you guys know and turn this tavern concept into something that's more of an internet presence. As we continue doing that, we want to make sure to stress that when we ask you guys to throw a comment up on there on our YouTube and stuff like that, we want to let you know that that's going to be your way of jumping in and helping us formulate what it is that we discuss on the podcast each week. We want the podcast to be something that you can listen to from start to finish and know that it's going to have things that you want to hear. And right now, we're just throwing out as many things as we can that we know we like. And hopefully you guys are really enjoying that as well. But we want to let you guys know that we want you guys to be able to, as a group, come together and help formulate the different content that we come to, the discussions that happen. And also, we don't want to forget that we are eventually going to bring on some guests. And your comments on our YouTube, and as we get the podcast going on a website and stuff like that, your interaction there is really going to help guide us on who we're going to bring on to the podcast. We have some ideas of people that we know we would love to record a conversation with, but if you have more people that you can think that maybe we could pick their brains a little bit, or maybe have a similar discussion as to what we do weekly and benefit from having them on, we'll be able to get that kind of feedback from you on the YouTube, as well as the website and any message board that we might put up or anything like that. So we're going to jump right in talking about some gaming that we're looking forward to doing coming up here in the near future. The first thing that's really been catching our attention, I think because of the pretty awesome commercial on TV, has been the new Witcher 3 video game that's coming out. I'm going to go ahead and say that that's the first Witcher game that has caught my attention at all. What about you, Matt? Did any of them really grab you?
I didn't play the first two because of that.
So with this one that's coming out, I haven't done a whole lot of research into it other than what I've seen on the TV and that's grabbed me there. What have you found about this specific game? Because I know you've sat down and I was watching over your shoulder on some videos recently about this particular game, and you've been telling me that it's one that I've needed to play for a little while now.
GameSpot gave it a 10 out of 10. I watched some of their reviews. They consider it the best open-world RPG. The cool thing about The Witcher 3 is not only does every single decision, big and small, change the outcome of your game, but it goes entirely in depth with any other game that you've probably ever played when it comes to emotional outlook on the NPCs that you interact with.
So when it comes to like your particular alignment and how you interact with the world, when it comes to the NPCs that you interact with, is that like a party system? Are there people there watching you?
No. The game itself basically gives you a NPC that has very deep emotions.
Okay, is that like your character, or is it just each individual person that exists in the world?
Every single person that exists in the world is extremely unique, physically and emotionally.
Okay, so as you're going through this type of a story, for somebody that's never played any of these games, what are your impressions from the videos that you've seen of your angle on this? What's your interaction with the world?
I like the fact that it's third person. It really gives rise to the ability to see the world that they've created, which is extremely beautiful, and the graphics that are behind it are very in-depth as well.
It looked a lot like a HD Skyrim on steroids.
Yes, it looked like an upgraded Skyrim to me.
One of the things that I noticed about that whole deal that you're talking about with the third person really threw me back to Skyrim as well, is that Skyrim was the first Elder Scrolls game that I played almost fully in third person. Only in the really tight spots did I zoom in with my character on Skyrim, and with the rest of the Elder Scrolls games, I don't know about anybody else, but it was first person, if I'm not mistaken. And you maybe had an option to look at your character, but when you were playing the game, you played
like
it first
the 360
person.
view.
Yeah, but you definitely went through the entire game in first person, and I wasn't complaining about that. My first MMO experience was almost entirely first person. So
I also like The Witcher 3 for its high degree of character outfitting. If you consider something like Diablo or Skyrim an in-depth outfitting system, this is more in-depth.
So you're talking about the character customization, like when you're sitting there moving the sliders and making them look like you want them to
No, I'm
look.
talking about outfitting him.
Oh, so like clothing.
Yes, clothing, items, accessories, everything. The looting system is focused on very hardcore in this game.
Okay, that's really awesome. So it's even got the elements, man. That's really cool. So that you are talking about a complete world sandbox game.
Yes, and every single quest is unique. And I say that without sounding broad with any other game. I mean that with every single quest is extremely unique. It's
Okay.
in depth. It's got a lot of background to it. It'll suck you in. It looks great.
I really like that. I mean, my MMO fix right now has got more story than real MMO as it feels in the end game, and I am not complaining at all. So that sounds really, really cool. Is it multi-platform? Do you know that? Is it on more than one? I haven't paid any attention to that now that I think about it.
The Witcher 3 runs on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC.
Oh, there's a PC version. I am definitely going to be jumping on this.
Oh, yeah.
game.
It's going to be played in this house.
Oh, for sure. And so it's got all those other things. So it doesn't matter. I've got a controller that hooks up to my computer as well, even if it's like built for the Xbox controller. We're going to get on that. What about like classing and skill trees? Did you see anything in relation to that? Did it go that in depth in the video that I saw you watching?
It has 4 skill trees to choose from and 70 skills total to invest points in.
Awesome. So what different like angles does that give you on the game with those 3 different trees?
It gives you combat skills. That increases your offensive, defensive, and crossbow.
Okay.
Signs. That improves the 5 signs that you can use throughout the game. Those are basically magic. And then
Right
you have
on.
your alchemy skills, which are potions, bombs, mutagens, and oils. Also, I remember that the potion system is considered extremely vast, and some previews and talks have shown that you might not even get through all the potions that you can create in the game.
That's really cool. I definitely dig trade skills and stuff like that as a part of the game that influences your character instead of just being something that you do in the background a little bit.
So, since we talked a little bit about Witcher 3, why don't you tell me about Crowfall a little bit, Josh?
Well, Crowfall is an MMO that I showed you and my brother and a few other people a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I think. I'm not real sure exactly when, but this was a MMO that I found that is was a Kickstarter campaign. And I know as soon as I say Kickstarter game, a lot of you are going to think, oh, well, whatever. But what really caught my attention was 2 developers and their specific game history when they came in. Now, these 2 guys have a really sick resume. I don't know their name, but these 2 developers, one of them worked on a game called Shadowbane, which I played when it came out.
That's a good one.
That was a lot of fun. It was glitchy as all get out, but it was at a time when MMOs were very glitchy as games, in my opinion. So that was excusable on that part. When it came to a game in its own right, it was so far ahead of its time. And even if it came out today with no glitches, it would still be ahead of its time. No game has come out rivaling the way that their city building system and that their territorial system went down. But that's enough about Shadowbane. The other developer that was in the video on the Kickstarter worked on Star Wars Galaxies, which we've talked about before. That's an old love of mine. One of the original barbed hooks that got me into MMO gaming for life. I would say EverQuest started that, Star Wars Galaxies, and Dark Age of Camelot drove the last nails in that coffin. So, Crowfall is a game made by these two developers that is supposed to be a mixture of the MMORPG and the RTS strategy style game.
This is also in third person as well, isn't it?
It's got elements that are MMO elements from third person that are exactly what you imagine when I say that, except it's got that WildStar feel where it's a more ground-based attack system. There's dodging, a lot of stuff like that. But it has RTS elements where you're also going to build a kingdom. Now, this is where I'm going to kind of go ahead of myself a little bit, so I'm going to reel it in. You start off with this concept of a game where they want an RTS that inherently has to end and an MMORPG that has to go on forever, which they talk about in these videos. So if you want to hear straight from the horse's mouth, go to crowfall.com, watch some of these videos. I'll talk a little bit more about the website in a minute. But they're building a game where you have those two elements where part of the game has to continue on forever, but another part of the game that you're interacting with definitely has to have an end and has to have a winner in order to be fun. So you get what I'm saying from that angle?
Yeah. From what I've read, the systems that are included are 5 of them. One is Eternal Kingdom. That's where your character builds his actual fortress and domain.
Correct.
And then you've got God's Reach, The Infected, The Shadow, and Dregs, which are all campaign-style areas that
Absolutely.
Die and reborn constantly.
Right, which will lead me into my explanation of the way the world works. Okay, so you just named off a few campaigns. Those are the things that will go on that will have a winner. They'll have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You'll participate in them. Some of them will be focused more on PvP. Some of them may be focused more on PvE. Some of them may be focused more on trade skills and infrastructure.
So basically what you're telling me is when it's reborn or the campaign is renewed, there's new quests and there's new objectives?
There's new everything, Matt. Okay. Literally new everything. And when the developers talk about this, they want to stress that as much as possible. That every time you jump in on a campaign, it's fresh. And you feel like it's a whole new thing so that your character, where maybe in one campaign you just got mopped. You got your butt handed to you on a silver platter. What happens at that point is you go back to what you referred to earlier as an eternal kingdom, which is something that you're building for your character that lasts forever. You and your friends or your guild or whatever community that you want to be persistently involved in within the Crowfall game has your eternal kingdoms can be what sounds like linked in a way. You can have a leader who basically oversees the entirety of the way the game runs within your eternal kingdom. And that can be different from player to player to player or from different territory to territory. They've made it sound like the campaigns are basically where you war against each other, and the Eternal Kingdoms are where you come home, and they've said specifically where you display your trophies. You participate in the things that are going to be persistent.
Your guild hall.
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
But your
cool.
guild hall is so much more interactive, and there have been other games that have given this an attempt in the fact that you could create a home on WildStar where you could put stuff down and play quests inside of it. And that was a lot of fun. But this is talking about something more interactive to where you and your friends live in the same eternal kingdom or can choose to live in the same eternal kingdom, I might say. You could probably choose to live by your own self or whatever that goes down. It's a real cool concept, though, that it's almost as though you were taking servers with whole entirely different rule sets of the same game and allowing your character to jump among those servers.
I really like how they've set the campaign beginning and end up. They've entirely invested a night and day season. So when the campaign starts, it's spring, and it always ends in the wintertime.
Wow. Now, they have actually made reference to the Game of Thrones element of the game that they're going for, where you'll have vassals, people who've played longer, who've built more power, or people who can build power by going through political structures and things like that. So that's really cool that they're taking the feel that Game of Thrones have of the impending doom of the winter. And they do say that at the end of each campaign, the campaign will end in an extremely epic manner. Now, one of the things that makes the game more epic, in my opinion, is their use of this new thing that's come out called voxels.
The little bitty boxes?
Yes. For those of you who may be listening that haven't been on the cusp of this particular technology that's coming into gaming. These voxels are very similar to what's going on in Minecraft, where you have blocks, except you can manipulate these blocks quite a lot more than just stacking them in different combinations and things like that. It gives you a much more fantasy MMO builder feel than I would say that Minecraft gives you the artistic 8-bit construction feel that it has. But you take these voxels and they're fully destructible in this game is the thing that they're really getting after. That a warrior that's super powerful, the video showed some of them running through walls, and there's sieges where castles are being blown to bits and pieces of it that fly off could possibly cause damage to you. All kinds of mechanics that sound really fun to the MMO gamer, in my opinion, that wants to war against either the world or other MMO players. That it just seems epic.
And what about the crafting system? How even the seasons affect the crafting.
Like the availability of different things?
Yeah, like late summer,
right.
A lot of stuff becomes scarce, and then it exceedingly increases from there. Not only that, but the monsters increase in difficulty.
I just think that it's showing the development of the MMO into the life of your character and how you're going to be able to participate in that. I know that I imagined my first session on an MMO much in the same way that I imagined my first session of D&D. That I sat down, I created this thing, and he existed or she existed in their own world. And they persisted in this world, that's where they lived. And it's giving you that feel with these seasons, that this is a living and breathing world where your character lives. And as much as you're willing to participate, you'll see that it has its own character, its own living and breathing existence. To me, I think that's the direction MMOs should go. I'll give a shout out to an anime that I absolutely love called Sword Art Online that gave a really good rendition of the way I think the VR MMOs should feel and the way it should be interacted with to a certain degree. I mean, there's definitely some cheese in the anime. I think those of us that watch anime watch it for the cheese half the time, but it has its moments. But what I'm getting at is the feel of being a part of a living, breathing world that has its subtleties that our world has as well.
So speaking of D&D, what about that new campaign that we're fixing to play in a couple of days?
Well, speaking of D&D, I'm going to go ahead and express the sadness of the end of our 5th edition campaign. Our first real, true, dedicated 5th edition campaign came to a halt because our dungeon master had to go be an adult and get a job. But we're taking the time to reform with our party and get our feet wet again. And in this one, we're going to be trying, I think, did you say it was the newest campaign setting that's been put out?
I will be running you guys against the Princes of the Apocalypse.
And that just sounds ominous in its own right, dude. What I'm really excited about is that I'm going to branch out in this. 5th edition is a version of D&D that has made me comfortable enough to go to a completely new class.
I'm really glad that you guys are reaching out and trying new things.
Yeah, I know each of us that is going to be playing in this specific session is going to be playing a class that hasn't been our go-to guy at all, not even our second or third choice. I'm personally going for a wizard, and in the way that I'm running this wizard on the sage background, he's a celestial wizard that's obsessed with the heavens. And this is a whole element of Dungeons & Dragons that I've never played with. I've always played with divine magic as the clerics have it. It's something gifted to them by the gods. Whereas wizards, they meticulously study and achieve and learn their magic and make it their own. And that's going to make D&D a completely different game for me. They have little room to be zealots, but a whole lot of room to be cocky about the work that they've done. I'm really excited about going in that direction, especially with the Purecaster, and you know as well as anyone that when I play my cleric, I go for melee and support.
Yeah, they spelled it wrong. They actually are supposed to spell it war priest.
Yeah.
So you're playing a wizard.
Right.
Kyle is playing a
cleric, a Tempest cleric, the cleric of the Tempest domain. Yes.
And Cody is playing
I believe he said he was playing a paladin, and that's pretty neat in its own right. I've seen paladins in the other editions. I've not seen this type of paladin,
which is exciting.
They're going to take an oath, as far as I understand. That's their class feature, one of them.
Yeah, they're super paladin. Just turn around.
So tell me a little bit about that. You seem to know a little bit more than I do.
If anyone remembers the original 3.0 paladin, the goody two shoes, but goody two shoes in a valiant way. This guy is very goody two shoes in a lawful way. They focus on all these different codes of conduct, his mannerisms, the way he looks. Oh, they go in depth. I mean, they basically give you a pamphlet to play the paladin to a certain degree in the description.
Right on. And each specific oath has to do with the way that the paladin will do all
Correct.
those things.
Like never lie, cheat, or steal,
Right.
or maybe always see the two sides of the argument, no matter how bleak it looks. Very interesting things.
Like goodness, justice, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Right on. Well, with the Tempest Cleric, man, with the Tempest Cleric, it is really, really interesting because this is like the lightning and thunder cleric. The only game I've ever played other than D&D really that has something reminiscent to that. I've played a few now that I run my head through it, but the one that really strikes me was DAOC, Dark Age of Camelot, had a Thane. And the Thane was basically like a Thor priest. There was a lightning priest. They used hammers and shields and wielded the holy energy of lightning and smote their foes on the grounds of being a warrior and that whole almost barbaric thought process of triumph in combat, but triumph in the name of your lightning god and his awesome power.
Yes.
So what's really, really interesting is, in my opinion, the alignment of this cleric. Kyle, our friend that's made him, I think he had an idea that it was going to be a little bit different, but I don't think he really knew how different. The thing is that this cleric in particular is very much not good. And when I say that in the
alignment terms.
Yeah, alignment terms. They could be good if they really, really wanted to. But when they really devote themselves to their god and things like that, it's more about destruction and triumph and glory for yourself, which is not necessarily good. It's chaotic evil, really. It's about self-empowerment. And it doesn't always mean that you're a bad guy, but you're just serving yourself. There's no true goodness when it comes to the scope of things.
I really like the fluff that they gave this Tempest Cleric, is what you called it, right?
Yeah, the Tempest Cleric.
Originally, it was called a Storm Cleric, and it came out in D&D Encounters. Me and my friend Kristen went to a 12-week gaming system that they set up for 6 parties of 5. And basically, we played through a pre-made campaign. I remember she played, I think, the Paladin or Fighter that was revamped, and I played the Storm Cleric. Now, I don't know exactly how the Tempest Cleric plays, but the Storm Cleric healed maybe once or twice.
Okay.
He only had, I think at level 5, he only had 2 different healing powers. Everything else was literally knockback damage and melee attacks.
Absolutely. They're you got that right, that they're a controller, really. They have the ability to do what you would think lightning can do. But with the, like you said, the Storm Cleric, the Tempest Cleric is much the same. It's a Storm Cleric, really.
Does he have a lot of ranged attacks?
As far as I can tell, they were given the heavy armor and the martial proficiencies.
That's really cool. Okay.
So it seems like they're going to be close. I think they'd get a lot of touch attacks, maybe a lot of weapon empowering attacks, I would think. I haven't personally looked at a lot of the spells, really, because, like I've said 100 times before, you know me, warrior, cleric. That is what I do.
Yeah.
War, cleric. Yeah. All day, every day. Give me my 2-handed hammer. I'll heal you. I'll bless you. I'll give you better armor. And we're going to fight alongside each other. It's successful, in my opinion. And whereas there's better ways to be the support cleric, that, in my opinion, it's the most fun way to be the support cleric. for me to play it. But this Tempest Cleric is another. It's one of those things that we, as a group of D&D players, have simply not seen. Like you said, since you did your D&D encounters, I mean, we had,
and that was like 3 years ago.
Yeah. So that's really, really cool. I've talked about the celestial aspect of the wizard. One thing that we've approached in our study of the wizard as a class is the way the spell system works in 5.0. I want to shed a little light on our previous campaign that we weren't using the spell system exactly the way the book says, because we like to streamline our sessions if there's something that we just want to get down and play to a certain degree. But now we've learned the spell system inside and out for the wizard class or any class that functions out of a spell book. I'd just like to say it definitely complicates things a little bit rather than running it like a sorcerer.
Spells are definitely supposed to be harder than what we were making it.
Exactly. And that's going to be a whole lot of fun for every single one of us.
It creates magic as not only as a stimulus in the game, but a stimulus within the characters too, because you pull off these raw, awesome spells.
Oh yeah, and it takes a lot of forethought. I'll say that a lot of our D&D campaigns are very fly by the seat of your pants. When you're dragging a wizard along, he can't have that. You've got to be able to work things out and do it that way so that he can participate to the fullest.
I also want to give a shout out to Wizards of the Coast and letting everyone download the Player's Companion for free.
Now, that's the Elemental Player's Companion, the Elemental Evil, right?
That's the one with the Araka Kra. I don't know how to. It's the bird people. So the bird people
and the giants. What are they called? The
Goliaths.
Goliaths.
Yep.
Yes, that's the Elemental Evil supplement. Yeah, they let everybody get on and download that for free. Mad respect for that. Bring in your players and keep them in with content. You can sell me as many things as you want, but I've got to have more that gets me to stay involved, if you catch what I'm saying.
I really like the fact that it's free under the concept of 4 total races. Like I said, the bird people, and you mentioned the Goliath, the Ganassi, and you also get Deep Gnome.
Oh, yeah.
And the last portion of the book are all new spells for classes.
That's really, really cool. I know some of my wizard spells that I'm going to take later on will come directly from that supplement. It expounds on just a lot of the things that we've referenced as pros for the newest edition of D&D to be a real home run, in our opinion.
I have not been sad yet.
Not at all. Some of the forums that I've read have claimed some OP status on some things. I'm not going to shed light on that.
Yeah, but if you have to pick to find the needle in the hay, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you really do have to dig deep. The rules exploits are a little less possible, in my opinion, when you have a D&D with his head, or a D&D, when you have a DM with his head on straight.
And the player system, it's very tight in a sense that the rules are very streamlined and it's easy for anyone, which is awesome.
I will say that it was something to overcome for my brother to jump in on roleplay in previous editions of D&D. This 5th edition D&D character, it fits him like a glove. And if anybody knows my brother, I mean, the fact that I say he's a D&D player in the first place, I know you're probably just floored.
He's once in a blue moon.
I'm going to tell you right now, he's one of the best that I've played with.
He might sit down and boast a little bit, but he gets into it.
I'm just going to say something right here with this segue. When it comes to new players in D&D, you have to be willing to just commit yourself to whatever it is that is set in front of you when you make your character, whether it's something you've put hours and hours into or something that's just thrown at you. You got to be able to say, okay, this is my character and he's supposed to do these things and this is how I'm going to do them. And I really feel like a new player needs to be able to say, all right, I can function in that way. And if it's a fighter for you, if you feel comfortable in melee combat or a caster or a healer or whatever, tell the group and then just jump in. Don't be afraid. Ask questions. If you don't understand something, try. If you have an idea, don't be afraid to express it. I can't say how many times that I've sat through a session with the real answer to what we needed to do on the tip of my tongue, but I didn't say it because I thought it was dumb. Or I didn't want to ask that question that really, if I'd have asked it, we would have all known something that we should have known.
And you'd have
sooner.
gotten more into it.
Exactly. And that will allow you to jump in. And I think 5th edition, we've talked about the backgrounds in part. 5th edition backgrounds give you that ability to just dive right in, whether you pick them or roll for them. They're really, really good about that in particular.
And with how smooth the gaming system is, let's just expound on this, everyone. Josh's brother literally walked in. We had a character that was already made. He had never read nor played 5th edition before. Right. Sat down and within 10 minutes understood the entire game.
Well, and he is coming from a 3.5 perspective of the introduction to the game that he had. So he had a little bit of ground to jump off of. But absolutely,
I'm not tarnishing experience.
Yeah.
I'm literally saying that guy is just doing his normal life to and from. He comes over to hang out. Bam! Within 10 minutes,
right.
He's able to play this interactive game on the table.
That easily immersed. Absolutely, I agree 110%. But without going too much longer on the awesomeness of 5th edition, we're going to keep going with this new campaign. And we play weekly, and we do the podcast weekly. So periodically, we're going to give you updates on what happens on the campaign.
Extreme gruesome details.
I don't want to keep going too much more because there are some things that I know I have in store as a character. Matt being the DM, of course, he's got some things in store. And as we go on, maybe we'll even invite some members of our party onto the podcast to talk a little bit about what might have happened. Just to throw back once for just a minute on Crowfall, we didn't talk much about the class system.
Oh, yeah, we completely skipped that. Go ahead and tell me about it.
Well, we were talking about classes in general when I started, and then we jumped into D&D, which has its class systems hitting home runs right now. But anyways, so we've got Crowfall class system where it's talking right now about a multi-classing system with pros and cons of taking your classes that's going to influence your character.
That's good.
Some of the things that I like about that is, first off, admitting that each class is going to have strengths and weaknesses. One thing about MMOs that's really ticking me off right now is the same thing that ticked me off about Dungeons and Dragons 4.0.
The superhero stance. Only strengths.
Yeah, you're just some strong dude automatically. I jump in and I do thousands of damage.
Nah.
Crowfall seems to be talking about bringing in some disadvantages to the classes.
Good.
Things that they're not good at. And as you do your multi-classing, you'll consider the pros and cons of choosing 2 classes or 3 classes, depending on what they're going to go about doing with their multi-classing system. But you make your class out of archetypes. Now, these particular archetypes, as far as I've seen, there are 13 different archetypes that will go into making your character.
What do you mean by that?
Well, to list off what I've seen on the website, there's Myrmidon, Champion, Druid, Ranger, Confessor, Knight, Assassin, Templar, Frostweaver, Duelist, Stalker, Forge Master,
wow,
and Legionnaire. Now, there have been different expose videos on each of these classes where they're giving you insight on exactly what they do, I think. And so I can't really give too much on what those videos are because I haven't taken the time to sit down and watch them. I encourage everybody to do so. As I do, if I discover more things, I'll talk about them. But, so we don't know exactly what all these classes can do, but if we're just going to judge off the names that I just listed off, there's different classes that may do different trade skill elements of your class. I would think that that might be where you could have some of your pros and cons, is that if you take a trade skill, maybe you don't have the benefit of having 2 combat classes to mix together. But in the end, what I'm getting at is that they've got this system where you're going to be able to customize your character on the class level even more. I like games that bring in multi-classing systems or tiered classing systems the most, because if you have these types of games that give you these different classing systems, you have, on one hand, the tiered classing system where you start off as one class, you get so many levels, you progress into maybe a choice of 2 or 3 to just however many other classes, and you progress even more, maybe make one more choice and become your final heroic self.
That was what I was going to ask you, is how many classes can you cross-class with?
I haven't personally seen anything about that in my navigation of the website as of yet, but like I said, as I continue to get more information, I want to talk more about it. And the last thing I want to bring up about Crowfall, and then I'll let it die. Obviously, I'm excited about this game. It sounds like I should be. But the last thing I want to throw out is that they had this Kickstarter where you could donate money. And obviously on a Kickstarter, they have benefits. Well, the Kickstarter's over. They got funded. But you can still donate on their website. I'm not telling you should or shouldn't. There's not much out about this game. But what I will tell you is that you can buy in, depending on how much money you want to pay, anywhere from a $30-some-odd game where you'll get in on the final phase of beta testing and you'll get your copy of the game, to where you might pay $100 for a special edition and you'll get in on earlier phases of the beta. Now, I realize that this kind of goes back on some of the things that I've said previously in the podcast, but I do enjoy being able to buy in on a beta a little bit because I have seen it in other games that have benefited from it. But I will say I do experience a little bit of trepidation in seeing them let you buy into their beta, because I've also seen games allow that to ruin themselves. When you can buy into a beta, they end up getting stuck on fixing all the bugs in their unfinished product or whatever it may be, and then people just never even play the live release of the game because they've been in the beta already. They feel like they already know what's going on. But I will also point to Final Fantasy XI that allowed you to buy into their beta, did it correctly, in letting you in and not see the entirety of their game when the release came out. It was enough of a new experience that it felt like a real release of a game. But you can go to Crowfall and buy in on their system all the way from $30-some-odd to thousands of dollars and get all kinds of different benefits. I encourage all of our listeners to go to this game's website, see if it's something you'd be interested in. Go ahead and jump on board. Getting on early is a lot of fun, even if it ends up being a game that you're not going to stick with for a long time. I always have a good time following a game, and this seems like a game to follow.
So what about Game of Thrones, man?
I was actually about to say, so we haven't talked about Game of Thrones in a little while. I wanted to back off of it a little bit and give people time to do their thing, watch however much they wanted to watch. So here for just a little while, guys, I'm going to go ahead and let you know for the next few minutes we're going to talk about some Game of Thrones. We will talk about some content in the latest season, so if you're not fully caught up, you might want to tune out a little bit. But
these are spoilers.
I'll definitely go ahead and say possible spoilers, but I'll try to trim as much as I can so that even if you want to continue listening, I'm not going to kill it all. It'll still be fun to watch for you. But going into the discussion, let's talk a little bit about old Stannis Baratheon. I know you're getting a definite nerd interest in Stannis as a
yes.
as a king of
yes,
Westeros.
Dude, Stannis Baratheon, every single second he is on the camera, he is slowly buying my love.
Yes. I like that, but I don't like that being somebody that read some stuff in the books about Stannis that isn't so revealing. But where you're at in the show, Stannis is a real cool guy. He's come through for some people in a real big way, and he really is redeeming himself from being the guy that got Renly all stabbed by a shadow.
Starting out with Renly getting stabbed by a shadow was probably really bad for his character, visual overall.
Yeah, it put a bad taste in your mouth. I mean, why are you going to run up and kill the pretty boy? It's Stannis Baratheon. It's your brother, too. They talk about in Game of Thrones, kinslayers are just damned. But then again, he doesn't even believe in that religion. The religion he believes in, for those of you that don't know about the specific fire god that he worships, there's a story about the Avatar, the fire god, killed his wife with a burning sword or something like that. He was a kinslayer in his own right. So Stannis is okay with it, obviously. But now Stannis is coming through, in my opinion, as the best king Westeros could have for what's coming from the north.
the Baratheons just having that fucking stern mentality that they
Right.
exude. Stannis going up to the wall and talking with Jon Snow was really exciting to watch.
It really was, and I feel like they did that part in particular pretty well in the show. Showing the way Stannis was received at the wall, showing how it was that Jon Snow felt with Stannis' offer. I don't want to go too deeply into that, but with what was going on up there.
Yeah.
And I also feel like they portrayed Jon Snow's relationship with the wildlings very, very well.
What about his depiction as Lord Commander? How do you feel about that?
I think they're doing really well with the way he behaved as the Lord Commander.
Okay.
I think it really would be hard to miss the mark with Jon Snow because the book's very clear about his attitudes.
Right.
But other than that, I really they're keeping you right on the edge of your seat with those stories. I can't give too much more information, or I'll even ruin what's going on beyond that. I will say at that, we're getting to some stories I don't know what the heck's going on.
Which is so exciting.
Let's talk a little bit about Daenerys, if we can take some time for her. I think what's going on with her story is really, really cool. I did not finish her story in the last book that I read. The last thing that I read about Daenerys is going to happen in the next couple of episodes.
Well, the last time I saw this crazy Targaryen, she decided to pull her dragons back out, which is what I've been waiting for, that exact attitude.
Oh, yes. And one of the things that she's doing it very, very well is feigning the control the way that she does in the book, convincing people that she's got everything under control with these dragons when really they intimidate her almost as much as they would intimidate anybody else. She doesn't know how to train dragons, and nobody has trained
Especially
dragons
three
in
of them.
generations. Yeah. 3 dragons. Nobody's trained or seen dragons in generations. Stuff's going crazy with her. I think they're portraying Drogon, the big black dragon, very, very well, though. In that whole element of him going off and doing his own thing, that's a lot of fun to watch. That was one of the last things that I read about with her, was her beginning to see Drogon again.
What about the exciting fight scene with the stone men, dude?
Oh, man. Now, that's something that I feel like they're changing it up from the book a little bit. I will admit that the length of time between me reading the book to now could be clouding my thought there.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But I remember him having that encounter in a bit of a different way, but it's doing exactly what the books did. That encounter with the stone men was awesome. Tyrion almost drowning. In the book, they leave you at the end of a chapter with that. And you have to read about 4 or 5 other people before it comes back to tell you what happened. Thank God the show didn't end there. We both thought the show was going to end
I
there.
freaked for a second.
That's the end. That's part of one of the last parts of the last episode, or the latest episode. But I'm also really glad that we're getting into the content that wasn't leaked.
Finally.
Yeah, because I had a few friends that were, I watched.
Yeah, I've watched it already. Oh, I finally can watch Game of Thrones. It's been a month.
Yeah, and we all knew that was coming. But anyways, I really like that we're getting to that area. I want to talk a little bit about, in honor of him dying, Sir Barristan.
Okay, you want to talk about how he just comes into that back alley and kills all of them?
I want to talk about that character in general.
Okay, go ahead.
When it comes to
Tell me about Sir Barristan.
I mean, what have I said in the past? I love the good guy, right? The good guy is my favorite. Now, Sir Barristan is a Kingsguard to the core. The Kingsguard that you're seeing in Westeros right now
is corrupt.
They're shit.
Yeah.
It's infuriating how bad they are. Because you had people before them like Barristan fucking sell me. All right. This guy, he went through the entire dealings in Westeros with his honor intact. Barristan the Bold. He accompanied the king or the royal family at the Battle of the Trident between Rhaegar and Robert Baratheon, which some called the decider in the war, and survived. And when he realized his mistake in supporting Robert Baratheon, he went straight to the queen to put himself at her mercy. This is the quintessential Westerosi knight. When you sit there and you think about Eddard Stark being the real honorable guy, Barristan Selmy was also that type of character. So Ned dies in the very beginning, but you're left with this Barristan Selmy character that shows you the quintessential Westerosi knight. And I just think that it's worth noting that he was that. And it's really sad that we don't have that in the show anymore. But there are people who will step up in other areas, I hope. But I felt like he was worthy of note in the Daenerys story. The fact that he goes down is sad, but I really enjoyed him. He was one of my favorite characters. You know, you liked Stannis. I like Barristan.
Hey, I like Jon Snow, but I mean, you know, look, like you said, look, we can move on from Jon Snow.
Yeah. So there's some other things. I don't particularly remember Bronn going with Jaime. Now, I might be mistaken there, but I really like that part of the show. That particular relationship is a lot of fun to watch.
I really like through all this turmoil how Jaime is showing a what is perceived as a classical knight that's trying to come out of atonement.
Oh, yeah, we're trying to atone for his past life. Absolutely.
Right.
I would agree, but Jaime's a roller coaster, man.
I understand that he's rough around the edges, but the fact that he's going to save the princess by himself, quote unquote, is very. I just feels at home when it comes to the old knight stories to me.
In the books, it really shows you that Jaime is trying to fill his page in the Kingsguard book with honorable deeds, with things that make him worthy of being the knight commander. I think that's what he's called, whatever the rank is. But anyways, he wants to do that for himself because he had a look at old Barristan's page. You know, and he had
how
a look
his was literally empty, just about.
Exactly, and well in the show, Joffrey calls him out in the books. He's sitting there alone and has a personal realization. Speaking of that, that's when he decides to give Brienne her quest. It's another person I really wanted to talk a little bit about when it comes to Game of Thrones. But Jaime, in the end, is a very dynamic character. He's very much coming around, and it's really fun to watch. But I don't think that the show is going to give him all of it at once.
No, of course not.
And they're going to continue to make him look kind of seedy. Because he's still Jaime Lannister. And
he's still a Lannister.
He made the decisions he's made in his life. And some of them he feels good about, and most of them he doesn't. And he's very much going to show that as a character. But talking about Brienne, her relationship with Podrick Payne as a squire is a whole lot of fun.
Okay, hold up. Before you even begin, Podrick, just by himself, is great.
Old powerhouse in the bed.
Not only his extracurricular activities, but also the fact that really viewing his squirehood under all these different knights is pretty crazy.
I think it's going to show how through adversity the cream rises to the top. Okay. And, you know, there's a lot of bad stuff going on in Westeros right now, but in that is going to forge a lot of good stuff as well, I think, in certain individuals.
So go in about Brienne. Go ahead.
Well, her relationship with Pod is really cool. I think she's one of the better influences Podrick has probably had over his entire life. As she said in one of the past episodes, it's pretty recent, that he was sent to Tyrion as a punishment. Even though Tyrion treated him well, there wasn't much he was ever going to get from Tyrion. Even if Tyrion knighted him, he was going to be the knight that was knighted by the imp, and they would have come up with a real sickening nickname for that. And so Brienne, while she can't knight him because she's really nobody's knight right now, she was a Kingsguard for Renly, she could teach him a lot about how to survive in Westeros. And the thing is your title's all fine and dandy in Westeros, but we all know full well that does not keep you alive.
Now, we know the attitude in the show. Does the depiction of how Podrick always listens to her, and yet slowly but surely Brienne's attitude is being chipped away by his reluctantness?
I think that what they're trying to portray between this relationship is the particular dedication of Podrick and the fact that while Brienne is very big and strong and stays in a set of armor, she's mushy inside of that set of armor, and she needs somebody to reach out to. And Podrick is good and open. So someone that Brienne can reach out to. That's that relationship. It's a whole lot of fun to watch happen. It's a truly impressive feat of literature and cinema, in my opinion, in that it's transferring that emotion so well. Yeah, not just in that relationship, but in the way that all the relationships on Game of Thrones work.
Let's talk about my least favorite house.
Okay.
The Boltons.
What do you want? What do you want to know about them? I
really wanted to just tell the audience how much I hated them.
Well, I mean, you're kind of supposed to hate them. In the books, it tells you a lot more about why you probably ought to hate them. I mean, that's pretty much all we have to say about them. I think one of the more interesting things about the Boltons is that you see that the political struggle in Westeros has been going on for a long, long, long time. Evil people are at the top because they struggled to stay at the top politically.
Yeah, it definitely shows off their keen, cold, calculated attitudes.
Absolutely. And it's just the way it's had to be for a real long time. And unless I'm mistaken, the Boltons and the Starks warred when the Starks were king in the north.
Right. And that's when they displayed the flayed man for them, right? Correct? Or something like that.
I want to say...
They flayed someone for them.
Don't quote me on this, but I want to say that the flayed man comes from a time when the Boltons flayed someone that was resistant to the Starks to show their fealty. And while it was gruesome or something like that, they accepted it. And saying, okay, well, you flayed the man, so you're obviously on our side. But only until they could seize control. There's Shady. They're in with the phrase. Old Fat Walda got married to Lord Bolton. And I'm not going to go into anything more about what's happened to the Boltons recently because that's a really good development that people need to go see themselves.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I really didn't want to get... into the middle of it. I just wanted to, just kind of throw out there that I hated.
Let's
just hate.
Okay. One thing that I wanted to talk a little bit more about because it's coming up to time is this Mad Max movie.
Oh, man.
When is that coming out again?
It comes out this next Friday on the 15th.
Right on. So this coming Friday on the 15th. So I can't wait to go see this movie. You've been getting me amped up to go see this movie. Our old boy Tom's been talking all about going to see this movie. So what's up with this movie and why is it still one that we need to go see?
Okay, first off, George Miller, the original director of the first and second and third one, is doing this one.
Mm-hmm.
It's minimum CGI. Almost the entire movie is filmed with stunt performers. At some point, what I told you the other day, some of the bad guys called polecats are up on 300-foot poles that they are only strapped to on the waist, and they move back and forth while these cars are going 40 to 60 miles an hour.
Okay, right on.
They decided to, since Australia has gained a lot of greenery in the past 30 years since the 70s, they moved to a desert out in Africa. It's a 1,200-mile stretch of desert.
Heck yeah, man. I really like the fact that they're moving away from CGI, but then again, it's obvious from some of the previews and trailers that there's going to be some CGI, but I think that's where success is made, is a marriage between the computer-generated and the real actual live action shot.
Yes, the whole movie is going to be a visual performance. I mean, George Miller is going for that first and foremost. He also mentioned publicly that this is going along with the storyline. This is why he didn't choose Mel Gibson, because it's not a Mad Max. It's Mad Max a couple of years later when water and gasoline is prominent, and now the source that everyone is looking for is people. Slavery. Ooh. Is the point of this movie.
Okay. Wow. So we just need to go see it. As much as I've seen, as much as we've talked about it, this is one I might even hit up at midnight. Well, you said it was a Friday night release, so it's looking like I might have to work on that Saturday, but if there's any way I can hack it, I'm gonna go check this movie out. At some point, it's got me really, really excited.
One thing I also want to touch up on the Mad Max, if anyone is questioning that it's just going to be bad at all, or not as good as the original. Just understand that these people stayed for 5 months to 5 to 6 months in the desert, did not leave. So they filmed the entire movie while they were there. There was one shot specific that took 138 days to finish. These people are very serious about making this movie a standalone in its own right.
Absolutely. One thing that I have to say about any type of a big production film is when they really put their axe to the grinder and try to give you a sharp and real keen movie like that, where it comes out looking nice. People have put a lot of hard work into it. I feel like that transfers a lot of times. I'm not saying that all good movies are only the ones that they work the hardest for, but I feel like that when people really put their time and energy into any type of an art form, it shows, and you're going to be able to feel it. I'm just amped about this movie. I love action movies. I love high fantasy, especially post-apocalyptic high fantasy and sci-fi. That's my favorite type of deal. I know I just put a lot of words together that don't really go together, but you know what I mean. It's
I know what you mean. It's going to be great. We're going to enjoy it. We're going to talk about it after the movie.
Right up our alley, for sure. So we're approaching right up on an hour on the recorded mark, so we're going to be wrapping this up. As usual, at the end, we just want to come through and say thank you guys for listening.
Thank you so much.
It really is fun sitting down once a week and just talking into these microphones, going over the things that Matt and myself have found throughout the week that we enjoy, and bringing some stuff to the table maybe you hadn't heard of, hashing some things out that maybe you hadn't thought about. But like I said at the beginning of this episode, I'm going to bring it back up. Come on in and give us some comments and let us know what you want to hear.
We want to talk to you guys.
The whole concept of the Call to the Brewman's Bottle is that we're coming together in this fictional tavern to have a drink with each other and talk about what it is that we like. So we want to invite you guys in. Pull up your chair at the table and get in on this conversation. But until then, this is Josh.
And this is Matt.
And this has been the Call to the Brewman's Bottle.